more than anything in life in the last several years, right? And we are graduating students like you who do not have the required intercultural communication competence to the point where you may not be ready to go out into the world and work with multinational companies, work with people of all different nationalities, which is increasingly the case. Because you can send a message from a cell phone and it can be instantly read across the world, we have to be more understanding of what audience is. And what we call that is intercultural communication competence, right? So it's an understanding of different cultures and how to compose information that works with them. There are some components to that I wanted to share today. And our other panelists will be talking about instances which give you examples of these types of things. Now, there's two things you have to think about when you are attempting to communicate. One is you have to be effective, and another is appropriate. Sometimes effectiveness is separate than appropriateness. Effectiveness might include understanding your own goals as well as the rewards of your communication, but also those of your intended audience, right? But if you're writing to somebody in China, we have a visiting professor from China here today. If you're writing to somebody in Africa, how do you know what their goals are unless you do some careful analysis, right? Some of that analysis comes in these types of categories. You have to have a certain level of knowledge. This is why I recommend study abroad. It's an amazing opportunity that opens your eyes to how things work in different cultures. You have to be empathetic, which means you have to be emotionally ready to understand the differences between your culture and another culture. You have to have a lot of confidence in what you're saying, the conviction that there may be difference in how you're saying something that another culture may be receiving. And those differences have to come out with your confidence. You have to understand that there may be differences, but you can work around those things. You have to know what kind of values you yourself carry. Americans, when you say, hey, I'm an American, you may not know what your values are. If I say, what is a quintessential American food? What is it? Do you know? I mean, you really have to think about it. But if I say Italian food, what is that?
Pasta.
If I say Chinese food, what is that? Right? I mean, you have something very specific in your mind. So being able to understand your own value system is very important. That's why, again, study abroad is useful. You go abroad, you look back at your own culture. So there are these different cultural values. There's a dude named Hofstede, who's a big-time researcher, who's come up with these different cultural values. And every nation has different affinities toward these. So for instance, I mentioned China. China is a very collectivist society. So they will make their value decisions based upon a collective appeal. We're very individualistic in America. And so our value structure is quite a bit different. So if you're composing something for a country where you have employees in both cultures, you're going to have to pay very close attention to that because your values may be different than their values. Individualism versus collectivism, masculine, feminine, uncertainty avoidance, long-term versus short-term. Do you think Americans are more interested in the short-term or the long-term? We want to make a buck and we want to make it today, right? That's what our short-term value system is generally shaped around. That may be different than another culture that values family, generations, companies as families a lot differently than we do. So your ability to understand those differences and similarities is extremely important to be effective or not. Because we all wear different kinds of hats. We all have to work together in order to solve some of the world's biggest problems today. Let me give you an example of this. And these may be a cultural understanding between people in different countries or within your own country, right? So last year I had the opportunity to work with some students in India. And when I was teaching in India, I was teaching at a new school. And this is a school where that was just being built. And some of the workers are not necessarily from the same cultural background as some of the students. The students, in fact, were told not to interact at all with the workers, that they wear different kinds of hats. And I felt that was a really negative thing to do. Creates all sorts of problems in terms of their education. And so we worked on understanding who they were from a cultural perspective. We did what was called using multimodal essays. And this is one, sort of like a video essay. And this is one that a student produced. It's real quick.
The person chosen for this interview is a construction worker currently employed at Ashoka. In search of higher wages, the worker migrated from Madhya Pradesh to Sonepat. He was a part of the team that erected our hostels, during which he was given a shelter on site. However, as soon as it was time for us to move in, he, along with all the other workers, was asked to find a new home for himself. This was done to avoid his interference in our lives. So Ashoka led to a change in the workers' home twice, directly or indirectly. In spite of his sacrifice for our current homes, he's not allowed to enter the place which he once built, alienating him from his own product. The extent of alienation is such that he does not know the name of the university for which he has been working for so many months. He never bothered to inquire. What has led to this alienation and lack of attachment? His identity. While we have visitors getting guided towards to our hostel, this person here is restricted to enter the area because he has this label of a construction worker forever imposed on him. He identifies himself as nothing more than a hard hat who has nothing to do with the name of the workplace. So isn't this worker technically homeless? Although he has a house to live in, the attached values such as freedom, attachment, and an independent identity are clearly missing. According to him, his real house is in Madhya Pradesh.
Okay, so this sense of understanding different cultures and the characteristics of those cultures will help you communicate more effectively with them. But you have to flip it on in and say, you know, we're a very diverse society anyway. And what about within our own culture do we have to understand? Because we need to become more of a pluralistic, comprehensive society that takes into consideration all of these different characteristics, both within our own culture as well as outside of our culture. So this is what intercultural communication competence is. And I want to challenge you to think about these things and not to leave Texas Tech without a solid understanding of how to identify differences and similarities within your own culture as well as others. Okay?
Great. Thank you, Dr. Rice. Let's give him a hand. Okay. Next up on our schedule is Dr. Batra.
I teach in the English department, and I specialize in what is called postcolonial literatures, which is just another fancy name for non-Western literatures. So literature which is not British, which is not American, but which is from various other parts of the world. And this semester, I'm teaching a course in Black British literature, which is literature about and by people who have migrated from the Caribbean to Britain and written about that experience. So a lot of my work involves the Caribbean, but also this sort of movement between various cultures and across various cultures. I see some of my classes here, so they know what I'm talking about here. We've been talking about migration. We've been talking a lot about race, and in the previous class that we met on I think Wednesday, we talked also about issues of intersectional identities, or identities which are not just one thing or another, but a composite of various different kinds of subjectivity. So I introduced the idea of raced sexualities, people who may be gay or lesbian, but who are also Black, and how does that impact on their negotiations with the world that they find themselves in. So in this particular talk, I'm going to be talking about one particular form of communication which all of you have encountered. When you go abroad or when you travel, how many of you look at travel guides? Does anybody look at travel guides anymore? Well, at least you go online and check something, right? Those travel guides are available online as well. And two of the most famous travel guides are, one is called the Farmer's Guide, and the other is called the Lonely Planet, right? And these are very specific forms of communication. Travel guides are meant to give people like you and me information about a place which we may not be familiar with, right? If you've never been to the Caribbean, then you will turn to the travel guide and look for ways to maximize your vacation in the Caribbean. After all, isn't the Caribbean the land of sun, sand, and sex? Yes or no, right? That's the stereotype, right? And so to maximize the sun and the sand, and we'll leave the other bit out for now. To maximize the sun and sand, you will need to check up on various places of tourist interest that you are likely to visit, the beaches which are famous, the hotels or the resorts which are famous. So we're talking about a situation where these guides become definitive documents, at least in your head. In your head, they are sort of true accounts of the place you are likely to be visiting. So when I was doing some research, I came across a few descriptions which kind of made me wonder what is happening here. So this is from Farmer's Guide, which is a very popular guide. They have guidebooks to every place on earth. All the Caribbean islands, all countries in Europe, all countries in Asia, etc. And this is what they said by way of advice to gay travelers who might be traveling to the Caribbean. Jamaica is the most homophobic island in the Caribbean, blah, blah, blah. Okay, it's good to have that information, right? If a person happens to be gay and traveling to a homophobic location, they need to know about it, right? Would you agree? Okay. Well, the thing which caught my attention was the second half of the statement. If you are desiring a gay trip to get some sun, forget Jamaica unless you want to stay in the closet. I mean, what's the connection here? If you're desiring a gay trip to get some sun, if you're just out there sunbathing, does it matter if you're gay or straight? No. Here's what's happening. The whole idea of desiring a gay trip to get some sun is a code word for sexual relations with the natives in the Caribbean. That's what's happening. In a way, what the travel guide is saying, if you intend to go and have sexual relations with the natives, then do so discreetly. Do not do so openly. Right? So that in itself is a very problematic codification. It sort of indicates to the gay traveler that all the natives out there in the Caribbean, in Jamaica, which is a pretty homophobic place, so the natives are eager to have sex with the visiting tourists, right? And that, what does that say about race and queerness? Some pretty strong stereotypes that the Black people, particularly the Black gay people in Jamaica, are out to make a quick buck. That's not a very nice thing to say about any culture, particularly one which you are likely to be visiting. If I was reading this, it would really put me off, as a traveler, right? But you really have to read between the lines to get the coded message that the guide is advertising. I'll give you just another example very briefly. This is from the Lonely Planet. Again, the same kind of rhetoric. There is a gay scene in Kingston, which is the capital of Jamaica, but it is an underground affair, as Jamaica is a largely homophobic society. Sure, we know that. Yet, There are some hotels, and this is the purple highlighted area, there are some hotels that welcome gay travelers, including all-inclusives. All-inclusive usually means food, drink, and a place to sleep. I think what is happening here is that all-inclusive is again a code word for food, drink, accommodation, and also sex. Publicly, though, discretion is important and open displays of affection should be avoided. So the same kind of stereotyping of Black Caribbean gay men and women is being enacted in this travel guide as well. Sort of this makes me doubt the communicativeness or any attempt at enlightening the tourist. It sort of puts the whole purpose of the tourist guide into deep suspicion for me, at least. Right? I'm just going to end very briefly with this poem, which you cannot probably see, but this is by Stacey Ann Chin, who's a spoken word performer. She's from Jamaica. She now lives in New York, so she calls herself Jamaican, as you can see. And she says, Jamaica is the kind of place, this is the last stanza, Jamaica is the kind of place that foreigners fall in love with during spring break, honeymoon, retirement, vacation. We are the perfect spot for tanning, for keeping tabs on Fidel Castro, for eating too much and sleeping too little. It is a place of servants and summer nights and all-inclusive hotels, and still the natives leave the rocking groves every year. She's talking about Caribbean migration out of the Caribbean into other countries. Why is it, if it's a place of sun, sex, and sand, why is it that the natives are leaving in droves? Because there is no economy there except the tourist economy. And as we have seen from the examples I provided, even the tourist economy is coded towards a sort of selling of sex primarily and little else. Some more reading. If you're interested in some theory, here are some books. This is a very good book, Black Sexual Politics. There's another great book, Black Queer Studies. And finally, one of my favorites, Why I Hate Abercrombie and Fitch, by Dwight McBride. Thank you.
Thanks. Dr. Olaniran is next.
The good news about going after my two colleagues is the fact that I can just kind of summarize everything they've said and go sit down. As you can see, by the way, my name is Bolanle Olaniran. I'm a professor in the Communication Studies Department, and I usually teach organization communication, which takes me to look at things from the cross-cultural perspectives. Because, I teach students who are going to be working in the global environment. And when I was first approached, to kind of speak today, I was thinking the audience might actually be from technical communication department or division. So I kind of try to tailor my presentation towards that arena, but you can also see some of us that practice other forms of communication can benefit from learning about the values of other culture. Culture is really very important. I think probably more than any other era that we have lived in. We live in a globalized society now, and where everything and anything is practically connected with the aid of technology and transportation. And some of the challenges with that is also the notion of stereotypes that Dr. Batra talks a little bit about earlier on, when she mentioned the idea or the notion of stereotypes. You see people who write the Froma Guide or Lonely Planet, how they depict a particular culture without even knowing that they are being offensive to that particular society. And we do the same thing. Before you kind of, blame on the planet too much or Thomas Guide, we do the same thing. We go to Europe and we still think America is number one. Even if we believe that, there's something about the idea of trying not to stick out. Because when you try to stick out, you're setting yourself up for disaster or danger, okay? If nothing else, if you don't buy into the idea of cultural diversity, at least know that the rest of the world don't think the same way that we think. And I ought to know, my original background is, I was born and raised in Nigeria, okay? And I came to the United States when I was very little, at the age of 15. And I've been here for over 34 years, all right? So people ask me, they say, where are you from? I say, on what day? On what time? Because I'll give you a different answer, just like that lady, Jamaican. I don't know if I belong into a Nigerian culture or I totally belong into American culture. It depends on what I'm doing at a given moment or whatever environment that I find myself. So having said that, Dr. Rice already talked about that big dude that I pretty much make my career off of. His name is Gerd Hofstede. And Hofstede basically comes with all these dimensions. I'm not going to repeat them again. So what I wanted to kind of just give you a general idea is that we probably live in what we call an individualistic society, where it's all about me, and more me. But the rest of the world, more so than us, lives in the culture where they live in the notion of group or collectivism. Let's just take those two dimensions, the kind of problems that it can create. We can be defined here in, say, in the United States by the types of work that we do, the kinds of cars we drive, our status within society. But other cultures, such as Asian culture, African culture, Latino culture, they are more defined within the collectives that they find themselves. When I talk about, let me just kind of share this with you real quick. Not too long ago, a company by the name of PostCon had a problem in their hand where some of their employees were jumping off 10-story building and committing suicide. When you and I look at that, you say, it's not worth dying for, right? But what I wanted to explain to you is that most of the individuals that work in that company, they are the only hope for their immediate environment and immediate family, and also their extended family. So when they do not succeed, it's a shame. And by bringing a shame to the rest of the collectives is the worst thing you can ever do. So they figure there's no way out. To you and I, it probably doesn't make sense. To them, that's the best honor that they can exit this world from. Okay, it looks like I've already come to the end of my presentation, and I haven't already started. Let me just kind of wrap up. The notion of color, for those of us who do designs, what do we usually use the color red for? Is it for warning or for something pleasant? Warning, right? But in Chinese culture, red means blessing. So when you design a website and you take out lots of red and you introduce blue or gray, it's not going to be appreciated. It's not going to be used, and it's definitely not going to be implemented. So what's the purpose of all this? Well, values and beliefs impact tech adoption and also its use. All right? So as you're coming up with that next gadget, thinking about who would be your audience. And you cannot know that unless you first kind of understand the beliefs and values that drives people from within that culture. In other words, you cannot teach or change that which you haven't already mastered. And Mr. Miyagi said that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Brandy Bippes. Yeah, you should. Go to the. Yeah, that's right. That you will.
So today I'm going to talk to you about my trip to China. I'm a PhD student, and a few years ago I spent the summer working in China. I had done a lot of studies in intercultural communication, and took my bag, arrived in China not knowing quite what to expect. I didn't speak any Chinese, and so I went to work. About 2 hours from my office, I had found my way to work with this lovely note that says in Chinese, "Please take me to this location. I don't speak any Chinese. Dear God, help me." Today, I'm going to talk to you about interning abroad, experiencing technical communication in Shanghai. So I'm a technical communicator. I teach English and I teach technical communication, and I'm a PhD student now here because of some of the things that I learned while I was traveling abroad. Really confirmed that I wanted to teach, and so I'm going to talk about that today. So in 2013, I hired an internship agency and basically wrote my dream internship. And I was accepted to go work in this beautiful office here. I don't know if you can see. There's a lovely ping pong table, some lovely chairs that look like cool hands making cool gestures. There's graffiti on the wall. This is awesome. My dream place to work. I worked for a company that taught team building training for Fortune 500 companies. So I made myself a list. This is on my bucket list, things that I might want to do. I might want to research some interesting technical communication, of course, because I'm studying in China. I went over to edit a bilingual website. I'm monolingual. I only speak English. I've studied a little bit of other different languages, but really, I only speak English fluently. I went to edit a 46-page company brochure. They told me I was editing a brochure, and I opened it, and there's this 46-page book of thick text that I'll share with you. I wanted to homestay with the Shanghai family, and I wanted to study Mandarin while I was there in 9 weeks. I also had some opportunities to develop some team building training for Blizzard Entertainment. How many of you play Blizzard games? It was pretty epic. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Do team building training for people who are making like my favorite games. And I also had the opportunity to co-brand a new product line, which is something that was not in my contract. And I also got to meet some interesting people, and this is just in the park, so I got to experience some really interesting things. This is just what happens in the People's Park in China. People gather and they play instruments, and they just meet randomly and play. So if I had had an instrument, I could have just joined them and played. I saw some familiar sights. And of course, I earned credits for my major, the underlying motivation there. And I got some really cool stamps in my passport. So one of the things that I was doing there was looking at, the first thing I did was look at their competitors. The company had hired me I was a volunteer, I shouldn't say, they didn't give me any money. But they did give me a nice gift in the end, I'll tell you about that. So I was looking at the competitors and how they had made their materials marketable to a more Western audience. So I told you this company was working with Fortune 500 companies, and they wanted to their goal was to reach a more Western audience. So I was working on the English version of their materials to bring that to a more Western audience. So I got to study marketing design, and this is just one example of the tea culture in Shanghai. I was looking at the size of the paper, the texture, the colors, the way that they advertised things, and the way that they worded things. My job was technical editing. Here's one example of some technical communication that I observed while I was there. I don't know if you can read this. It says, it's a picture of a toilet, and it says, okay. It can reach more than 100,000 times if you push down the butt plate by using force. I have no idea what I was supposed to do with that toilet. I also look at packaging design. These are just a few examples of what I look at. This was a shopping trip. Some of the things that I had bought while I was shopping and how they had packaged different shampoos and different products that I had bought while I was there. Some of them were very familiar and some of them were not. Here's another example of some technical communication. Prohibit ask for tips. I think I understand what that means. Don't ask for tips. This is in a tourist place. Here's an example of some really complex technical communication that you might be familiar with. This is a train map. Another piece of technical communication. No chasing. Caution slip. I love the picture. Get it? Notice void. Some misspellings and some public stuff. And some interesting choices. This was really funny. This sign, the process of urination must be accompanied by a doping control escort of the same sex. I just had to go pee. I have no idea what that meant. I'm really confused. Studied some Mandarin while I was there, and I was working on a multilingual non-English content management system, working for these huge companies, Kodak, IKEA, on this huge website. You can see how many subdivisions they have on their website. This is a picture of the website, the content management system, and you can see it's all in Chinese, and I had to navigate the whole thing. So what I did, my strategy here was just memorizing where things were. It worked. This is a picture of the website here, and you can see, I don't know if you can see from back there, but most of it's in English, and then we have this image here that has the Chinese on it. I don't think a Western audience that I was working for would probably understand that. Then we had some more, got more complex when they put it in the headers. Might have been okay, like in the pictures. And I had to recognize some content. As some of the issues that we deal with as technical communicators, I just found some information here as I was reading through that I had recognized from Thomas Kuhn's Structures of the Scientific Revolution. It had just been taken straight out of the book and put right into the website. So one of the issues that I had to deal with there was what we would consider plagiarism. And we dealt with some ethical issues. This was my favorite. So I built a good rapport with this company, and I had a good relationship with my boss there, to the fact that he had even asked me if I would help give his child an American name. So that to me was a really big honor. But this was in that big book that I was editing. They're 46-page marketing materials, and it says happy ending. So I'm glad we broke the ice with the sex conversation earlier, because I wasn't quite sure what to do when I came to this. And it said happy ending. So I don't expect you to answer, but maybe think about it. What would you do if you were in a foreign country, or even here at home, and you saw this in something that you were asked to help edit or look at and give some advice on? If you saw the happy ending, how might you approach that with your boss? So this is one of the complex decisions that I had to make while I was there. And it turned out pretty good because we built a good relationship. So I'll give you the nice version of this. So in China, this was how my boss explained it. When you land in an airplane and it was a safe landing, then everyone cheers and says, yay, happy ending. It's great, right? So I was faced with the decision of whether or not I wanted to explain the other version of the happy ending to my boss. It was very complex. Long story short, I did. Yeah, and my boss was male. So that added another layer of complexity. So yeah. I have some more pictures for you. The other ethical issue that I was faced with is that I was there to do those three things that I had told you in that list earlier. I was there to edit that website and that marketing brochure, and then I was asked to design a whole other brand. And so I got to work with a really cool. I said, sure, I have time, might as well. I got to work with a really cool designer who had studied at Oxford, And we designed this new website and this new logo. It's called Harmotal for Clavel. And it was about happiness. So I got to research some culture and how to interact and how to design a website for a totally different audience. Here's my information if you want to get in touch with me. My name is Brandy Bippes. Kind of hard to spell. You can take a photo if you want. Thanks.
Thanks, Brandy. Okay, we have one more presenter, Sophie Frankel, and while Sophie's setting up, we're gonna have like 15 minutes for Q&A. So if you've got any questions you want to ask our panel, maybe start jotting them down now, and we'll get to that after Sophie's presentation. Great, thanks, Sophie.
Before we begin, can we have a round of applause for these awesome speakers? And thank you, Tim and STC, for putting this on for diversity. So I'm Sophie Frankel. I'm a senior technical communication student minoring in English, and I'm also a member of STC. And I'm here to talk about a project that I did my sophomore year. This international project for information design with Dr. Kimball. And for this project, we were told that we would be collaborating with a class of Italian students, designing a document for Expo World Fair in Milan, Italy. So the theme for the Expo 2015 was about food, and it planned to raise awareness about various global hunger problems. So as we began working, it was really interesting learning and trying to figure out what types of things we should emphasize and not emphasize in our document, and like how that would be interpreted by people from an entirely different culture and language. So I think the biggest thing that the Italian collaborators were able to contribute was context about Italy and how Italian people would react or respond to our document and how we design that. So I came up with a accordion style pamphlet design for our document, including like maps of the venue and information about certain tents and locations of the festival and sponsors and things like that. But the biggest aspect of our document was a detachable frame on the cover of our document. And this was intended to be torn off and used to take pictures with and posted on social media and things like that with the hashtag Expo 2015. So we asked our Italian collaborators a lot of questions, like would Italian people understand how to even like use this document, and would they even want to, or like how many people do you know regularly use social media, and would you even use this frame, take pictures with it, etc. And I brought some of my prototype designs for the frames if any of you are interested in looking at them. It was a really, really interesting project. We had a little bit of a language barrier with the Italian people, but they really gave us a lot of helpful information. And like, for example, it was their idea to do the hashtag because they did say that social media was big there and that we could emphasize that more. Overall, we ended up making a really awesome document, and it was interactive and they really enjoyed it. And we had the help of translators. We were able to present it to Expo coordinators, and it was a really successful project, and I really enjoyed it. Does anybody have any questions?
Let's give Sophie a hand first, then we'll ask the panel questions. So I'm gonna grab up here, but yeah, if you guys have questions for our panel, we'll kind of just go one at a time. We have about, like I said, about 15 minutes. So if you guys have questions, love to take some of those. Somebody want to break the ice?
Oh, we've so already gone there.
Guess so.
I think you saw various forms of communication. For those of you who might be wondering what technical communication is, you found that websites are forms of technical communication. Signage, which is clear, is a form of technical communication. Travel guides are a form of communication. I wouldn't say entirely technical, but an important form of communication. Then Bolanle was talking about how people communicate in organizations and what acts carry certain meanings. And of course, the last presenter talked about a very innovative form of communication that she came up with. I don't know how many of you are tech comm students or technical communication students, but this panel was put together by Tim and Kylie, right? And they're grad students in the technical communication program, which is housed in English. I don't know why I'm here, but I'm not a technical communication specialist. I teach English literature. Bolanle teaches communication, so you're kind of,
Well, I'm
kind
kind
of,
of.
yeah. But if you have any questions, anything about the content or the form of the material that we presented or analyzed, or even questions about diversity, feel free to ask.
And if this open your eyes to taking classes with some of these wonderful people, and also us in communication media, feel free. We're here to help and to help you get from point A to point B, because you never can learn enough about different cultures. The one thing that, like I was talking about earlier on, was that has helped me so much in over 63 or 65 countries that I have visited. But like Brandy, I don't speak any of their language, but I always learn 3 key things. The word hi, how to say hello. Then the next one, I'm sorry. And the third one is please, can you help me? If you can do those 3 things, people will bend over backward to help you. But when you kind of go in with the idea that, I know what I'm doing, that will get you into a problem. And I really enjoy all these applied aspect of the presentation, how they take what they learn, to kind of help those different organizations.
And consider being an English major or a minor. I have to make that pitch.
I think for study abroad, I'm going to vote. Yes, English is awesome, but also for study abroad, because study abroad, I've actually studied abroad in 4 countries, and I have paid for this much of it because I've done it all through scholarships. So I think it's great. I think you should all go study abroad and go adventure and try something new, because every time you go someplace new, it changes you. And I'm pretty sure that 5 years ago, I would not have imagined myself standing on a stage at an R1 university talking about happy endings and encouraging you to go engage in such a similar experience.
The other thing to remember, I keep telling students who are doubtful, why are we talking about race, and why are we talking about sexuality, and why are we talking about different cultures and ethnicities, is that what is not considered popular in this part of the world, learning about other cultures, learning about other experiences, is pretty standard for the part of the world where I come from. I don't know of a single person from among my friend circle back in India who has not been abroad. So the expectation is not that you will stay in your country and you will stay in your little sort of cocoon and build your life there. The expectation is you stay there, but you'll also go elsewhere. And so if people begin with that expectation and come to learn about other cultures and about other experiences, then who is at an advantage here? The person who is learning about other cultures, or the person who is not interested in other cultures at all, not interested in world politics or news or anything different than West Texas? You tell me who's at an advantage. You know the answer, right?
All the sayings that we know as Texans are BS. Texas, everything's bigger in Texas. No, it's not. Don't mess with Texas. We should be messing with Texas, right? We should be messing with all these things. So we can ask questions too, right? Sure. So as the t-shirts say, this is Diversity Week. What has been the most interesting thing you've learned this week about diversity that you hadn't thought of before? Nothing. You know everything.
I can pick on my students, but they don't like it, and I know that they don't like it. So speak up, people make me proud.
Especially people wearing the purple shirts. I think you have to earn these, right?
That's
Go
right.
into something to tell them.
Anything new you learned this week? Sure.
Well, I'm in this Dr. Barker's class in English. So I think like the most interesting thing about like diversity is like just basically living as a whole. Like we learn about identity and how it corresponds to like gender, race, ethnicity, wealthy class. So I just think it's like just learning about diversity about different cultures. I think it's just interesting in a whole because I would love to go study abroad, but I'm that kind of person who's like scared and like shy, and I don't think I would go into another country. But I just think the whole diversity is just very interesting. And for me, being in education, being a teacher, a future teacher, I need to know and learn about the diversity and stuff. So I think all you guys, are great doing what you do. I don't know. I just think it's really interesting.
Thank you. Like Ms. Is it Bippes said earlier on, there's still some courses, even for this summer 1 and summer 2, that you can take for study abroad that will kind towards your degree plan that you can look to. And I do believe our Office of International Affairs do provide some form of scholarship to kind of also help you defray the cost. Like she said, she went on scholarships, but if you never ask, you'll never know. Whereas most of the organizations that I know of today, when you tell them that you've been to some of these countries and you put those on your resume, you stand out among the crowd. While other people might be, say, oh, am I going to stand out? You already stand out because you are the type of person that they are looking for.
And don't be afraid of study abroad because when you study abroad in college or through your college or university, you go in a group. And there is no, there is no safer way than to travel with a university group. You're not on your own. You're not figuring out the travel guides and everything else. Everything is figured out for you already. And your tuition, as Rich said, is paying into study abroad. The study abroad fees is built into your tuition, whether you take the option of studying abroad or not. So I would say, well, if I'm paying into it, I might as well avail of the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. We have about 10 minutes. I'd love to get some questions actually asked to our panel. If you don't mind, I'll ask the first one. Sophie, could you tell us more about those frames that you designed? Like, what was the inspiration and what did you wind up actually using?
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought, since we were working with these Italian collaborators and it's a world fair, we were getting people from all over the world who was going to be there. So I wanted to design a document that all kinds of people would be able to use. So this frame was perfect because it was interactive and you could just take pictures with it. And it's easy to understand, and anybody from any country or anyone who spoke from any language would be able to use this document. And that's something that was like a goal of mine, and I was able to achieve that. And yeah, it worked out really well.
Okay, other questions? Yeah, go for it.
You said the first 15 years of your life you spent in Nigeria. It's not too personal. What cultural differences have you observed between your country of origin and where you live now?
It's not personal. It's something I love to talk about. One of them, I always joke about this, in my class. How even though we use the same in my own tribal language, we use the same alphabet as English alphabet, but we have some other derivatives such as a dotted I, an undotted I, a dotted E, and undotted E. That kind of give us, the pronunciation, those kind of things. But I remember my very first week at Langston University in Oklahoma. My very first week on campus, brand spanking new. I was walking towards the library, and this nice, about my maybe a little bit older than me because I'm always the youngest in my class anyway. I was walking towards the library, and the lady just did a nonverbal communication where she did something like this, which to you and I today will probably mean the word I. But where I come from, that gesture means come here or come here. You can go either way. So I started walking towards her. Then she turned her back. And I was like, how rude. So I went to my dormitory. Then I asked my senior brother or my big brother. And I said, what does that mean? So he explained, he said she was just being nice to you. So in some of those little intricacy, idiomatic expressions, things that I'm not familiar with, I had to struggle with to adjust to it. Does that kind of help with what you wanted? Yeah. The other one is food. On any given day, I'm a picky eater. It doesn't matter whether it's from my home country or not. I'm a picky eater. So to have to convert to American dietary system was very difficult, and it's still difficult. My wife told me that I give her a nightmare. That's right.
We have a professor in the room who is studying abroad, in a sense, from China, Fayang. He is from Nanjing Forestry University. And I thought I have a question for Fayang. How are American students different than Chinese students?
This is a big question, I should say. Actually, we learn in different classrooms. We have bigger class, like 30, 40, even sometimes over 100. But here, most of the time, I see classroom of like less than 20. So usually there are more beverages or food work, something like that. And also, I find, actually, before I came here 5 years ago, I think this is the second time I come here. Most of the time, people say, "Well, American students do not study hard." Actually, we were wrong. Actually, most of the college students are much harder than our Chinese college students. I should say that's a general fact. Okay, the upper level, I mean, the graduate students, they're learning even much more harder than Chinese students. That's a big impression I get from here. I see people studying very hard in the library, in the classroom, or in other places, but sometimes I'm not sure. But other Chinese students, they do not spend too much time on their work, they study. I think one of the reasons is that they used to study too hard when they were high school students. Now my daughter is now studying in level high. Compared to the study back at home, it's much easier for her to do. I do tell her that don't forget, with the grade getting higher, I mean, now she's grade. But I say we're getting higher, 11, 12. More and more students are studying much harder, or even harder than you. So when you get to the college, you must remember, there used to be a saying like teachers who let students who are preparing for the college entrance and examinations, they say, study hard. When you are in college, you are free. Or something like that. So to encourage them to study hard. And when you become college students, you are free to do whatever you want to. Okay. So that's a big impression I got. And I'm not sure it's the answer to that, but I have one more thing to add, also to what we last year. There's now quite a lot of many Chinese colleges or universities are offering scholarships to students all over the world. So if you are interested in experiencing a different culture, they're really welcome to apply for these scholarships to study in China. So maybe some things you are not familiar with, or you are not good with, like the error or something like that. But the one thing you should remember is our China is a really open world. We welcome people from all over the world, from all parts of the world. And also you have your native foods in China. You can see almost McDonald's, KFC, Subway, many restaurants. You can taste simple, even local food in even some small cities in China. So don't mention Shanghai or Beijing. Those are the biggest cities. Even in some small cities, you can see these restaurants. So don't feel free. Okay, you can apply for this and then new.
Okay, that's all we have time for the panel. So let's give our panelists a hand. Thank you very much.
Before we leave, let's give the organizer a round of applause.
Thank you for coming.